Hi, this is Dr. Beth Corbo, and I want to welcome you to Lecture 4B. And the purpose of this short lecture is to explore this week's reading from Eileen Marzola. Her chapter from the multisensory book is called Strategies to Improve Reading Comprehension Within a Multisensory Classroom. Let's get started. Marzola's chapter is full of wonderful information. In this lecture, I'm going to attempt to unpack a bit of this information because the chapter is lengthy. However, while it is lengthy, please read it thoughtfully as it is really filled with helpful information. Marzola's objectives include identifying major shifts in the focus of reading comprehension instruction, describing the historical role of comprehension in reading instruction, identifying general strategies of good readers, understanding and describing common sources of students' difficulties, and identifying specific research-validated strategies for comprehension instruction. In her chapter, Marzola establishes that the introduction of the Common Core State Standards for English Language Arts and Literacy had a significant impact on comprehension instruction. She cited the Common Core as having brought comprehension instruction into a new era, as the Common Core called for a focus on complex expository text with integrated academic language. The Common Core called for the following: regular practice with complex texts and their academic language, reading, writing, and speaking grounded in evidence from texts, both literary and informational. This recommendation marks a shift away from answering questions that can be answered primarily from a student's background knowledge. This stepped away from allowing students to use their experiences to answer questions and towards questions that require a close reading of a text. And it called for building knowledge through content-rich nonfiction. The importance of students being immersed in information about the world around them so that they can gain general knowledge and vocabulary were a big part of the Common Core. Let's think about some historical perspective behind all this. Marzola shared that comprehension instruction was largely absent from classrooms through the 60s and 70s. She reports that instead of the focus being on teaching comprehension, the spotlight was on testing comprehension. She shares that the research conducted in the late 1990s showed that attention to comprehension instruction was still woefully underrepresented in classrooms, and that recent research unfortunately has not indicated much appreciable improvement. I know that when I started my teaching career, while students were required to answer questions included at the end of reading selections, little thought was ever given to the steps that readers go through to process and understand that text. It seems that students were expected to acquire strategies to comprehend through self-discovery. But as we know, students are often not able to discover reading strategies without teacher modeling. Then, as Marzola tells us, through the 2000s, comprehension instruction that took place was more constructivist in nature. This constructivist approach focuses on the unique knowledge base each reader brings to the text, resulting in a unique interpretation of that text. The role of the teacher in this model is one of a facilitator, and classroom activity is organized largely around discussion. And within these discussions, each student contributes his or her own interpretation. And then the introduction of the Common Core brought the advent of close reading, which was described as, in quotes, a particular way of reading and responding to texts. The anchor standards require students to read closely, again I quote, to determine what the text says explicitly and make logical inferences from it and cite specific textual evidence when writing or speaking to support conclusions drawn from the text. This focus on the text marks a shift away from teachers' encouragement for their readers making personal connections to what they are reading. That was the constructivist approach. The Common Core took a step away from that constructivist approach. As comprehension research evolved, much of this research focused on strategies used by good readers. Within the chapter, Table 16.1 outlines the differences between behaviors of good and poor readers before, during, and after reading. Please see page 606 for the complete table. Marzola tells us on pages 605 through 607 that, in quote, good readers have many strengths that prevent them from encountering the pitfalls experienced by less skilled readers. For example, good readers understand the complexities of the reading process. They can identify key ideas from the text they are reading, and they are aware of text structures that can assist their comprehension. For example, headings and subheadings. Good readers rarely allow themselves to get too lost in the text that they are reading. Being a strong reader, a strong comprehender, involves many multifaceted skills. Individuals who are strong comprehenders bring an abundance of skills to the complex task of reading with understanding. Marzola shares that strong comprehenders have much that facilitates their success. They have rich experience with literacy and an understanding of text structure. They have strong oral language ability. They have a breadth of background knowledge, including understanding of both high utility and content-specific vocabulary. They have accurate, fluent decoding skills and efficient active comprehension strategies, including monitoring their understanding of their interactions with text. Marzola tells us that individuals who struggle to comprehend may have deficits in any one of these areas. Additionally, these difficulties, or the source of these difficulties, may change as children grow and develop. For example, word reading skills are a major contributor to poor reading comprehension for third graders. But she reports that for fifth and sixth graders, word reading and listening comprehension often play equal roles in comprehension performance. Marzola shares that students with dyslexia have profound difficulty with reading text in general. Students with dyslexia may, in addition, be lacking in language skills beyond access to written language. However, a child who cannot access words on a page accurately and fluency will struggle to access higher order skills needed to comprehend. Marzola tells us that some students may focus too much on word level reading and fail to derive meaning from what has been read. These students may feel that good readers, in quotes, get all the words right. Marzola says that these students miss the point of reading. They are not always aware of when they become lost in the text. And if they are aware, they lack the active comprehension strategies needed to get them back on track. Finally, Marzola shares that the role of background knowledge in weak vocabulary development can have a significant effect on comprehending text. She emphasizes the importance of exposing students to nonfiction texts to deepen our students' background knowledge and enrich their vocabularies. Marzola shares that Hirsch, drawing on the work of Hart and Risley, has probably done more to draw attention to the role of background knowledge in facilitating comprehension than anyone. The National Reading Panel applied a strict selection process in choosing about 200 studies that were relevant to instruction of reading or comprehension. Then, before conclusions could be drawn about the effectiveness of the strategies selected, the next step was to establish only those studies that had an experimental effect that was, quotes, reliable, robust, replicable, and general. So in 2000, the National Reading Panel published their results and identified 7 strategies which appear to have strong scientific basis for concluding that they can improve comprehension in typical readers. Number 1, comprehension monitoring, in which readers learn how to be aware of their level of understanding as they read. Cooperative learning, in which students work together in pairs or small groups as they learn reading strategies. Graphic and semantic organizers, and these help students make graphic representations of the materials they are reading in order to bolster their comprehension. Question answering, in which teachers ask questions and students receive immediate feedback about their response. Question generation, in which students ask themselves questions to clarify understanding. Story structure, in which students learn how to use the structure of the text to help them recall content to answer questions about what they have read. And finally, summarization, to encapsulate and remember important ideas from the text. And in general, the research suggests that teaching a combination of techniques to bolster comprehension works the best. The National Reading Panel concluded that when these 7 strategies are used appropriately, they ultimately result in improved performance on standardized comprehension tests. Marzola does an excellent job of identifying and explaining reading strategies aligned with the findings of the National Reading Panel. If you have not created your comprehension lesson plan, these pages will give you lots of great ideas. You may also want to print these pages and mark the strategies you would like to utilize in your teaching. Remember, though, that strategy instruction should be limited and cannot replace content knowledge. However, there is a place for strategy instruction, and Marzola's chapter is an excellent resource for identifying those strategies that have been informed by research. After you've read this chapter, you will complete a retrieval practice on Blackboard. Remember that the purpose of retrieval practice is to help you remember. It is a research-based strategy that will help you to commit the content of the chapter to memory. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you enjoy Marzola's chapter.